Welcome everyone to today's episode of Anthropology Today. Our episode is inspired by the ongoing issue of organ commodification. We will be addressing this very sensitive yet overlooked issue and try to understand organ harvesting and its implications on marginalized groups in developing nations as a result of economic and democratic readjustments.
Also, we will tackle organ harvesting from a Marxist socialist perspective, as we'll outline that organ harvesting has commodified the human body for profit accumulation. Through this discussion, we'll consider to what extent ethical procurement takes place, why the black market is ignored, all which hinder one's human rights. The issue of organ harvesting may seem like something of an urban myth, but rather it is a harsh reality for those who find themselves financially subjected under the fast paced global market. The socio-economically disadvantaged persons of developing nations are forced into this illegal practice, such as the banned Falun Gong practitioners of China, or even the impoverished people of India, who seem to act upon desperation to sell their organs in order to keep their family alive.
Many anthropologists have raised these concerns and shed new light on this issue in more recent decades since the industry has expanded and become more and more unsafe, and borders on human rights are violated. For example, in China, prisoners are being held for unwarranted reasons and are executed and have their organs harvested and sold on the black market, and ultimately end up in the bodies of those who reside in prominent first world nations.
Something that really caught my attention is the whole perspective on ethical concerns regarding the commodification of human organs in recent years.
It is devastating to learn that the socio-economical disadvantaged see little assistance from governing authorities. Rather, it seems that some states employ a don't ask, don't tell policy when it comes to large-scale issues that border basic human rights.
Well, for one, procurement of human organs has developed into an issue that encompasses concerns of ethical transplant procedures, or lack thereof, and the implications on human rights. The increase of organ harvesting has been largely in response to supply demand arguments. Some, however, hold strong beliefs that this supply demand has been perpetuated because of an increased artificial need due to organ scarcity advocated by transplant surgery technicians. On the other hand, meeting the desired quota of needed organs becomes impossible to fulfill. As such, desperate organ recipients and the transplant surgeons inadvertently show little interest of how the organ was actually retrieved, which doesn't say much about the ethics of the practice. As the proven case with China shows, the growing practice of execution of the prisoners for harvesting viable organs, we are faced with the gruesome issue of declaring patients brain dead. Here is a short clip from the film Transmission 610 that will further explain my findings. Please be advised, however, that the clip is graphic and that it portrays real life issues that the Chinese people are currently facing. What we can take into consideration from this video is the issue of non-ethical organ harvesting and that it doesn't stop at operating on medically declared brain dead patients. We also have to consider the experiences of the desperately poor people living on the margins of the newly emerging global economy.
And this, of course, can be seen with the poor residents of India who find that in order to alleviate their current living situations, they can find middlemen to arrange doctors who are willingly removing kidneys for buyers from all across the globe.
What a scary thought. Do you think you can elaborate?
While due to the impoverished economic conditions, many of these poor people have no choice but to conform to the low payouts, as the middlemen take more than half the profits and leave the patients with relatively low amounts of money.
So, organ harvesting in India has accelerated where it's treated as a business, yet it remains one of the largest black market operations?
Of course, India is known to have one of the largest organ bazaars, where people can buy or sell organs or body parts in the black market. It is easily accessible and available, just as if one was looking to purchase produce or textiles. By the early 1990s, some 2,000 kidney transplants from living donors were being performed each year in India, leading Prakash Chandra to refer to India as the organ bazaars of the world. In other areas of India, the kidney business is controlled by the owners of for-profit hospitals that cater to foreign and domestic patients who can pay to occupy luxuriously equipped medical suites while waiting for a transplant from a living donor. The kidney trade is another link. Lawrence Cohen, who's written largely about India, suggests this to be a system of debt pinnage reinforced by neoliberal structural adjustment.
Yet again, we are faced with the growing concerns of the fast expanding global market under capitalism. For transplant specialists, an organ is just a thing, a commodity better used than wasted. But to a great many people, an organ is something else.
This is true. Kidney sales display some of the bizarre effects of a global capitalism that seeks to turn everything into a commodity. There have also been cases reported where doctors have undoubtedly removed body parts from patients' bodies without their given consent, and when asked by media and anthropologists why this is the case, they simply refuse to provide records from hospitals in order to cover up their wrongful deeds for the greed to make money off someone else's flesh, which is a stronger urge than ethical concern.
So, since we have seen that organ procurement has escalated on a large scale in India with financial profit as a driving force, how does the practice of organ commodification affect the daily lives of the Indian people?
Organ sales have become a societal norm for people of the lower classes. It has almost become a cultural norm for parents to sell their organs to receive enough money for dowries in order to secure a suitable marriage. We see that such subcitizens lack the support of government authority. The lack of government support for the poor and desperate also pertains to other developing nations like Brazil, Argentina, and Chile. Let us look at a short clip on this issue.
It is devastating to learn that the socio-economical disadvantaged see little assistance from governing authorities. Rather, it seems that some states employ a don't ask, don't tell policy when it comes to large-scale issues that border basic human rights.
But we shouldn't be surprised by this. Brazil, Argentina, Chile have seen an increase in organ trafficking where abduction, disappearance, mutilation, and death were all occurring under military regime during the 70s and the 80s. The state had launched an attack against the lower class sub-citizens who during these attacks were excessively tortured and whose body parts were used to serve the needs of the higher class super.
So we should understand that one of the groups affected by this process is the poor living in shanty towns, where kidnappings of youth and adults are generally overlooked by officials. The irony is too evident to ignore, I think.
In the late 1970s, organ transplant surgeries and organ sales reached a new peak. There were rumors circulating that medical agents from the US were looking for a fresh supply of human organs for the First World. These agents would drive around in shanty towns and kidnap young children. The bodies of these young children would then turn up later, but would be with no heart, no lungs, liver, kidneys, and eyes.
What's even more eye-opening is that in the present day where this still happens, we see compensation to living donors. In Brazil, there are many occurrences of this act. As a São Paulo doctor says, a brother donates his kidney and gets a private financial bonus. Next thing you know, he gets a car. A son donates a kidney to his father and gets extra privileges within the family. The most absurd one, however, is a young girl agreeing to trade with her uncle, her kidney for a house. Sadly, that didn't turn out as well as the uncle planned out, as after being told many times his body will refuse the kidney, he died and left a niece with no kidney but with a house.
It's sad and to see people pinned against the wall, where in their eyes the only solution is to sell their body parts. A few years ago, a story from the New York Times printed an article about a poor man from Brazil who lived in a slum and due to his inability to make enough money exchanged his kidney and a rib for 10 years' pay. That's only about $6,000.
Wow, this conversation has truly opened my eyes to this concealed yet ever evolving market. It seems strange to me that we can live our daily lives without so much as a second thought to this issue that seems to run rampant in most developing nations.
Well, the mere fact that such illegal operations even exist is a sign of the imperfections and malice of the global capitalist economy that is a constant perpetuating factor of the antisocial market value system. This global capitalist economy has paved a way to effectively commodify any object on the market, including the human body. Capitalism, we can see, has commodified human beings, human labor, and their reproductive capacity.
If certain measures are not implemented, what is the next step for those who experience these horrors daily? A more focused effort into rectifying the violations in human rights is needed if we are going to see any change in illegal and unethical organ procurement.
We have to understand that this requires national laws and international guidelines outlining and protecting the rights of organ donors, including living and dead, as well as organ recipients.
Also, I would like to agree with Ivana that organ transplantation requires a reasonable, fair, and equitable health care system. It also requires a reasonably democratic state in which basic human rights are guaranteed. A democratic state where basic human rights are guaranteed is something we should all try to achieve.
Wow, I can honestly say that discussing this topic today has changed my whole perspective on this issue. Things truly need to change if we're ever going to see any type of change in the near future.
Thank you to everyone who took part in today's panel discussion and contributed their insights on organ harvesting. For more information on today's topic, please follow the link at www.anthropologytoday.com. Join us next week as we discuss Greece's financial downturn and their debt and what implications this will have on the EU.